poor Shu, who was, he had to go to obedience school, which opens up so many more questions.
I want to point out that joke has invaded my mind in a way that I don't appreciate.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Dragon Ball Rewatch. My name is Alex Maglio, and we are here to guide you on this magical journey.
Yeah, hi, I'm Sam Stone. We're doing this Dragon Ball Rewatch. If you missed the first episode, is CBR's official, as the name suggests, Dragon Ball Rewatch podcast.
My name's John Greenall, and yeah, we're going straight into the second episode. So if you missed the first episode, pretty much what you missed was that Goku and Bulma met up, embarked on their quest, and Emperor Pilaf learned about the Dragon Balls, which we're going to learn more about now because episode 2 is The Emperor's Quest. Released in Japan on March 5th, 1986. Three cool things about this to start off. This adapts 2 chapters of the manga and technically a third, because this adapts No Balls and Sea Monkeys, but it also adapts Toriyama's earlier manga, Adventures of Tongpu. So if you wonder why this feels a little different to the previous episode, that's why.
Yeah. And just in case if you're watching along and want to figure out where to watch Dragon Ball, you can stream Dragon Ball on Crunchyroll and Hulu. And if you want to see the source material, go straight to the manga itself. You can get it through Viz Media, which has the official English translations published here in Los Estados Unidos. But yeah, let's dive into the Emperor's Quest. So yeah, I mean, this is we see more action, more humor, more humor of its era. and yeah. Kind of we see more of the ancillary cast, and of course most that being Emperor Pilaf along with Shu and Mai.
I think we got to talk about Shu and Mai and Emperor Pilaf, because their dynamic is so fun as like the main villains of the beginning of Dragon Ball, especially because Shu and Mai are like, Pilaf is an emperor of some kind, and Shu and Mai are so casual with him, even though they're kind of afraid of him, but they're also kind of like willing to razz on him a little bit, which I really appreciate.
It has that kind of classic villain troop energy going on. It's a bit Team Rocket. Obviously, years for Team Rocket be a thing. I do like how Pilaf, they kind of have him be a bit of a sort of childish sadist, which works really well because it means he can do these comedy moments, but also and sort of lose quite regularly. But it does mean he still feels like a bit of a threat. It does leave you wondering, if he came across Goku, there's equal chance that he will befriend him and also try and kill him.
Yeah, it's also, I mean, just their names alone suggests Toriyama's kind of tradition of food-based names. Pilaf being a type of rice dish, and Shu and Mai being,
Shumai.
Yeah, Shumai. So a lot. It's interesting. It's interesting that we also never find out what Pilaf is.
Yeah, is he a demon? Is he a Garlic Junior? Like,
is he just a person who just looks like that?
Yeah, they never really call attention to it. They're just like, he's just a blue pointy man.
I don't know if you guys ever played Dragon Ball Z Kakarot when the game came out, but there's a sub-quest in it where they talk about the animal people and how it was kind of like a fashion fad for a while, and I'm kind of wondering, is there a little similar thing happening here? But just for the Team Rocket comparison, is it me or is Pilaf Meowth in this equation?
He is, yes, but Meowth had the power in Team Rocket as well, so balances out. Fun because Pilaf just has this he's very TV comedian in his voice, which I think that's what the Meowth thing is. They're both inspired by those Japanese variety comedians that you see quite a lot, who have that's very similar cadence of talk, big line, talk, big line.
Yeah. I also like how Mai when Mai shows up, she's really cool, but by the end of the episode, she's completely deflated in that cool factor.
Yeah. She's supposed to be like, she feels very badass when she shows up, and then you very quickly realize that is not what we're going for. And then you have poor Shu, who was, he had to go to obedience school, which opens up so many more questions.
I want to point out that joke has invaded my mind in a way that I don't appreciate, because when sort of planning, I've ended up rewatching this episode like 4 or 5 times, and that joke, the more you think about it, the funnier it gets, because it's just, is he training himself? Does he tell himself off in obedience school? Is he the only dog without an owner there? It's one of those jokes, I'll be brushing my teeth before going to bed and suddenly think of that joke and just start laughing to myself because it's so surreal. but really well delivered.
This episode had a couple of like very good jokes and a couple of jokes that have not aged very well. But my favorite joke, one of my favorite jokes is a dubism in this episode when Bulma refers to Goku as being like he's clearly an alien, and that wasn't in the manga.
that was added in this later dub, so they already knew. But it's a very nice touch to sort of pull things together. And it's not that far out from the manga because she calls him weird several times. So you could totally fit that in without it feeling too wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
There's a more overt bit of foreshadowing that Goku's an alien. We're talking like Muscle Tower, but there's something overt. Speaking of Goku and Bulma, I think we need to, John mentioned the title of the second manga chapter, No Balls. I think we need to, because that's the payoff of this episode, so to speak.
Remember when I said last episode we're getting put on a list? This is what I meant.
Yep. My note for this when I'm watching this is just I believe owning this episode has put me on a list that will one day be read out in court. Because for those who haven't, go on.
I'm on 2 lists because 3 lists because 1 because I own the manga, 2 because I own the anime series Dragon Ball, 3 because the joke is so, I guess, key to old school Dragon Ball, original Toriyama's vision, that they repeat it in the 10th anniversary movie Dragon Ball Path to Power. And I own that too. Oh.
Yeah, so for those who haven't seen this episode, the crux of this is that Bulma uses one of her capsules to bring out a lovely 80s apartment. You can tell Toriyama really liked his tech for the love he puts into this era of design. You see it with the bike. You see it with the bikes Bulma uses. Oh, I don't blame him, because you realize this kid has lived on his own in a shack in the woods for at least 5 years, and then Bulma turns up going, I can make matter do whatever I wish it to.
Bulma is a witch. Like, that is, and Goku explicitly calls her that.
He does. That's one of the more interesting, we'll get to in a bit, but yes, basically they have a moment of domesticity, and Goku slowly realizes that having a tail isn't normal and that Bulma's body is different to his, which he explores in a way that would get you arrested.
Yeah, sex ed doesn't exist in the Toriyama world as far as we know.
It should.
Basic human anatomy and that sort of thing. But yeah, the idea that Goku used to sleep nestled on his grandpa Gohan's balls, and then he finds out that maybe Bulma doesn't have that available. Is the kind of the crux of the joke there. And yeah, it doesn't age well, and it probably would have weirded out American audiences in 1984 as well.
It ages less well for Americans as well, because I believe in the Japanese version they're sort of vaguely implying that his granddad was a tanuki, which at least makes some form of sense in it being a classical myth. But if you don't know that context, it's even worse.
There is also a Japanese word specifically that I don't know the exact word, but it translates out to golden ball pillow, where like this is a thing where it's just you laying on someone's balls essentially. And what I do like about the joke, I'm going to be very honest, even as an American watching it, is that this joke is clearly not being played for titillation. It is clearly being played as a kind of a joke, a little bit more on Goku and Bulma's interactions with each other. Like, and I do appreciate that. I also appreciate how quickly it goes off the rails, because Bulma's just like, oh no, the Dragon Balls, not knowing what he's really talking about.
Yeah. I was going to say, probably my biggest thing coming back to this episode sort of after many years is that as an adult, I found it also kind of sad.
Yeah.
A lot of these early Goku moments, definitely now as an adult who knows people with young children, it's when you're a kid, like, oh, he's living on his own, survived on his own, is kind of cool, it's adventurous. But as an adult, I'm like, oh God, that poor kid has just been, like, he doesn't know this because he's lost. Yeah, it's really, as an adult, it's really sad. It's like, oh, the fact that someone should have stepped in at some point, but they haven't, so now we're here.
I mean, a lot of stuff that happens here really foreshadows what, for me, is kind of one of the sadder moments in Dragon Ball Z, because no one tells Goku about the giant monkey thing until Vegeta shows up. And that to me is like the worst things his friends could have done to him. Is like, yeah, like Goku doesn't realize like why Grandpa Gohan died until he's in his early 20s, and everybody else has figured it out by then. Like that's just awful.
They
Yeah.
figured it out pretty quickly.
People wonder why modern Goku is so weird. It's like, yeah, because he skipped like every stage of childhood development and did them all when he was 35.
And
Yeah.
this episode also implies that Grandpa Gohan didn't really do a lot of parenting stuff. Like Goku doesn't know what a bath. It's always so up and down what Goku knows and what he doesn't, but he doesn't know what a bath really is, and it's interesting.
That's definitely one area I think the manga is a lot better than the episode here, is that the manga kind of seemingly has a better idea of what Goku knows and doesn't know. They play more into the fact that Goku is upset that Bulma can do this on command, which is the witch thing. But the anime plays it like he has no idea of what the concept even is, which feels a bit off because we saw him doing all this stuff. It doesn't help that Bulma explains it terribly.
Yeah.
He's basically go, do you know what rivers are? You were in one earlier. It's Indoor River.
Yeah, yeah. I will say the part that excels for me isn't so much the comedic moments between Goku and Bulma, it's the wolf fight. The idea we get a bigger action set piece than we did in the series premiere. It really isn't in the manga, but it's a nice little kind of moment to see how action oriented Goku can be, and it brings him closer to Shu and Mai. Not Pilaf just yet, but yeah.
No, it's a really nicely animated fight as well. It's very different to what would come later because it's a very comedic fight, but it's just so good. How Goku bounces around, just so much energy, and they did a really good job of giving him a fighting style that makes sense. In that he is very, very strong, but he's also pure chaos because he's got no formal backing apart from the few things he knows from his granddad. So what Goku does is he just throws himself at you and hopes he's the one on top by the end. And it works so well for this fight. Though I am ashamed that the wolf joke, because in the manga, he goes, I'm going to get some food, comes back with a dead wolf. Or in the anime, they go, I'm going to get some food, then they have the wolf fight. So it does ruin what is a really good joke. But if you've got to put a fight in somewhere, that's kind of the place, only real place they could have done it.
And
Yeah.
I have to say about Dragon Ball in particular, like there are a lot of good fights in Z and GT and Super. Like there are good fights there. I always really preferred the fight choreography in Dragon Ball because it still kind of had that martial arts flavor to it that at a certain point in Z kind of starts going away. Like they tried to get back to it in a lot of ways, but there's something about the way that Goku moves when he's fighting these wolves that it's much more like aesthetically pleasing to me on a fighting level.
It feels very Jackie Chan in
Yeah.
that kind of drunken master police story of Jackie Chan, where it's as much of big set pieces of throwing each other around. It's really good fun. Yeah, I think once the power level goes up, you slowly start to lose this because what is a kick to the face to a man who can obliterate the planet on a whim?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's some good choreography in Z, but yeah, at a certain point it is just usually with the longer fights just to mix things up. But in so the shorter skirmishes, it really is just power up, one hit somebody, and we're
Yeah.
done.
I
Uh,
I think the other thing that I do have to admit I really like about this episode, just to go a little earlier, is when Goku's talking about his tail, and Bulma has that moment where she's like, "Well, I don't know if boys have tails. How would I know if they do?" Like she's like he kind of like gaslights her for a minute into thinking, "Yeah, this is just a thing that boys have."
yeah.
I really like the tail teases they do they do this in the first episode quite a bit as well. They keep bringing it up enough to just keep reminding you that this is a thing, and you've got to keep watching to learn what is. But there's something it said we talked about in the first episode how they were really good at insinuating that there is a plot, there is a plan going forward. They do that here again with the tail. It's very clear that we have a resolution in mind, which really helps this episode because in other shows I think this would feel just playing for time. Here's the comedy silly episode. But here it does keep bringing that question up to make you go, well, maybe we will learn why Goku has his tail. And it always feels like it could come at any moment. So you can't skip an episode because you might miss that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I did want to touch on like in terms of forwarding the story. Yeah, this adapts chapter 2 of the manga. Really just the opening scene of chapter 3, which is the introduction of everyone's favorite Turtle. I love Turtle.
The
Turtle's like
voice
one
performance for Turtle is so good.
yeah.
Turtle has no consistent size. Like that's my only problem is like Turtle is either the size of a boulder or he's like the size of Goku. They cannot decide how big this animal is.
Well, maybe that's why it ended up so far from the sea somehow. Maybe like it just stretched really big, then shrunk.
Yeah, yeah. The joke is that he's the same size, and it's the same in the manga too. He's the same size as the boulders that Goku's crushing with his hands for exercise, and all of a sudden one of them like talks. It's like, oh no, hey, Goku, it's me, or like, hey, I'm a turtle. Like that's really the big story moment here, right? That's
Yeah.
the beat that gets this going because
And
big things come after the introduction of Turtle.
And I
and
do think it acts as a nice bit of foreshadowing for the personalities as well, how you see Bulma and Goku react differently to this. Because Bulma's like, well, that sucks, you're this far away. And Goku's like, well, no, of course we're going to carry you there. And in that moment, it really sums up both their characters so nicely and brings you back to that inherent tension of Bulma's out for herself, Goku is out to help everybody, but is far too naive to do it reliably.
I think it's also another one of the best jokes in the episode
Oh,
where it's like, oh, what? Here's some seawater. I think it's an 80. I think it's an 87. Nope, 86. Like it's such a good joke with Bulma and Turtle because it's played so straight and
well,
it's so good.
it's played so straight you don't sort of realize why does Bulma's capsule have seawater in it? Like
I thought she
that's
just
the
mixed.
mark of a really good gag when you don't realize how odd the setup is.
At first,
Yeah.
I thought she just mixed salt into regular water, but no, you're right. It is explicitly seawater.
She says in the next episode, she says, I gave you that seawater, implying that she just had it. I guess if you can carry whole houses in capsules, why not carry a bit of sea with you?
If you are a witch, why not?
I did want to spotlight Chuck Huber's performance as Emperor Pilaf. I mean,
Yes.
you hear him a bit in the first episode, but this is really kind of his showcase. And what I love about Chuck's work with Dragon Ball is he can voice someone as calm and collected as Android 17, but someone as like just maniacal and out of their just off their gourd as Pilaf or Garlic Jr.
But,
Um,
but maniacally in like a really consistently nice way as well, which really helps his character. Like, I don't
It,
think anyone could have done it better.
like Pilaf just has such a like he just has such a unique voice because it also underscores that like childish maliciousness to him. Like you have your villains who are like all about their stage presence, like Piccolo and Cell and like those like but Pilaf really isn't the stage presence guy. He kind of falls more into that Kid Buu category of like just pure maniacal chaos, and Hubert really does like absolutely kill it with that.
Which I think the chainsaw moment in this episode is Pilaf pulls a chainsaw and makes a Scarface reference. So,
Yeah,
which all the kids in the audience 100% got, of course, because
you
we
know,
all watched Scarface age 6. But the fact he does it so naturally that it doesn't feel like an overly done reference, it doesn't feel like too weird, is so just is credit to that performance.
I will admit the one thing I got to point out about Shu really quick is that in the modern era, I feel like people are going to hear him and be like, he sounds like Morty. He's like a proto Morty, and it I get it, I get the performance, but man, it's hard to unhear.
It's Morty meets Jerry Lewis, which definitely a combination I didn't think I'd be thinking of.
yeah, yeah, he really is kind of the sad sack in the Pilaf trio, you know. And of course, Goku thinking that that their plane is a bird just kind of underscores. You know, we were talking about what does Goku know, what doesn't he know, and it's like I guess he would think it's a metal bird, sure. Like,
That's
fine.
at least vaguely logical.
Yeah, like it makes sense in
I,
Goku's
I
language.
I love their plane, by the way.
Yeah,
Again, this is another thing of Toriyama just having this very distinct love for machinery. Hence why Bulma changes her bike every other scene, just so I have an excuse to draw every sports bike I've ever wanted.
and I love that the machines too still kind of keep with that much more rounded off shapes that the rest of the anime has. Like they feel correct. Like even though they are very different from the very natural scenery, they still match with what's going on. And I think that sometimes when you're too into the mechanics, like there are some Gundam episodes where it's like the mechanics just are too much for like the very 80s aesthetic. So I really appreciate that. And you know, when Toriyama was drawing them, like when he had like those standalone pages, he really went off on the mechanics of those things.
I think it's also just a nice bit of grounding. It really keeps contrasting with the magical stuff. Like all the little bits in Bulma's house of how he could have just given her like some weird techno house that does everything for you, but she has to use a coffee machine. She has a makeup table. It really does make these things feel more real, which makes it much easier to accept the magical stuff coming later. It does give this world sort of a consistent weight, which I really like, and I think it really adds a lot to these early episodes.
One of the things I love about the end credits scene is a lot of those images of like Bulma in the cockpit or Bulma with a machine gun by the motorcycle. Those
Yeah.
are like chapter covers, you know.
They're gorgeous. Like I love that ending song. I love how many shonen anime end with love songs. I'm not sure why this is a trend. Like One Punch Man did it, like pretty much every shonen does it, but they always end with these beautiful love songs and I really love it from like Bulma's point of view because that's what she really, especially when we had that scene with her watching like the kissing thing like that and then it goes to Godzilla. It's such a good focus on her and the ending cut really does that well. I think it's time for some final thoughts, and I'm going to ask a question. With our final thoughts, since we're talking a little bit about Bulma, what is your favorite Bulma haircut?
Oh, that's a good one. I think it's probably final tournament, which is to say the 22nd or the 23rd Tenkaichi Budokai, where she still got the bangs, but it's longer. It really kind of transitions that, you know, she's already like an adult by the 22nd tournament, but it's really kind of signaling the passage of time and how, you know, she's becoming a woman in her own right. And it's just a good look. It's a good I think that everyone's looks in the 23rd tournament are great and kind of underrated in a way.
I really like this first one. I think it's so. I think part of it is because it's so of its time that I just really enjoy how it's a hairstyle that you do not see today outside of like a couple of idol bands. So for me, it's like it's a novelty. I'm not sure if I would like it as much in the real world, but on Bulma in these episodes, I love it.
And for me, I'm gonna be that guy. I really kind of love Afro Bulma. I kind of just love Afro Bulma.
Burned out, yeah.
Like there's something about the ostentatiousness of it that feel like it's very in line with what was going on in that era of Dragon Ball Z stylistically, but there's something about it that is so fun. But yeah, it's time for some final thoughts. And my final thoughts are I genuinely enjoy the second episode. I think the jokes are fun. I do think that there are parts of it that have not aged quite as well as we could have hoped, but I still enjoy it. I love the dynamics between Goku and Bulma this early on. And the Pilaf gang is always fun. That monster Pilaf.
Yeah, I would echo that. I mean, I really like we see some more of the humor, love it or hate it, but it really does kind of like continue to lay the groundwork for Goku and Bulma's friendship. And yeah, anytime Pilaf is one of my favorite, kind of quietly one of my favorite characters in all of Dragon Ball. So anytime we get more of Pilaf, it's a good time.
Yeah, pretty much the same. For me, this humor isn't sort of my style of humor, but I admire how Toriyama has the jokes he likes, and he's going to make them and make them with full commitment. There is no sort of edging his bets in case someone doesn't like it. He's like, this is me, and I love how you can sort of feel him through the page whenever these jokes are made. He is writing for himself, and I respect that deeply.
Well, thank you very much for joining us again this week on Dragon Ball Rewatch, brought to you by CBR. As a reminder, you can watch Dragon Ball along with us on Crunchyroll and Hulu, and you can read along in the manga that is published by Viz Media. We thank you so much, and we will see you next time on Dragon Ball.